I was told there'd be a fireplace. Jaime, I'm going to start with you. A lot of us learned about working remotely with a gun to our head called COVID-19. I was driving back from upstate New York, and the publisher of the Free Press called and said, "Don't come into work tomorrow. Just be by your computer at 7:30." And that was the preparation we had. You had a big head start, so tell us about how your company began and why you were well practiced in this art by the time the pandemic came along.
Sure. So when we set GSH up, Gideon and I actually used to be a coach. So we're married, but we sat down over 100 times. We had 100 coaching sessions every week, and we decided very intentional, we decided what kind of company we wanted to create. And one of the things that we wanted to do was escape the Michigan weather, the winter. So we set up this company, and in the meantime, I kept saying to Gideon, you know, these winters are really hard for me. I'd really like to get out of here. And so before his last business venture, he said, I can't go yet. Let's just go on vacation. So we went on vacation literally like 7 months in a row, I think. We went to like nice places with beaches. And so then we fast forward, we set up GSH, and I think it was 3 weeks before we closed our first deal, we actually moved to Florida. We moved our primary residence to Florida. And it took me 3 years to convince Gideon to do this because he looked at me and he said, how am I going to run a business from Michigan in Florida? And I said, you're going to use Zoom. And so we ended up finding a place in Florida. We moved to Florida. He ran the business from Florida. I told him also, you need to find some really good departmental managers who you're actually going to manage the business through them. And so he did that. And a year after we were there, we have 2 children, and the school there wasn't aligned with our values, so we actually decided to pull our kids out of school and homeschool them. This was in 2019. So we were homeschooling and we were Zooming well before everyone else. So for us, it was actually a relief not a relief, but you know what I mean. When COVID hit and people were forced to start using Zoom.
They leveled the playing field for us.
Yeah, it became much more normal because that was the way that we were living our lives. And I mean, there was a little bit of shame around it. It was, you know, people would always ask questions like, "This is weird. How can you do this?" And so a lot of that stuff went away.
How many people are we talking about, and where were they arrayed when you were down in Florida? Was everybody else working in the same location?
Well, you know, we grew very organically. So when we moved to Florida, there was probably a team of 3, as well as my 2 partners. Closer to my mouth. You guys can hear me? Okay. Okay. I don't want to do one of these. Anyway, so we started with a small team, and as we built the portfolio, we built the team. And we started with a group in Michigan, and one of my partners is in Israel. So we hired within 6 months, we hired an employee in Israel. And like I said earlier, you know, we purchased over 20 deals, over 7,400 units over the last 5 years, and so the business has grown to today 25 team members. 40% of those folks are in Michigan. Some are scattered in multiple states, and then we've got about 5 in Tel Aviv.
Gideon, you described to me a little earlier that you were a hard-driving entrepreneur, and that the company really didn't focus on human values particularly. I mean, when you say grew organically, you were goal-oriented and trying to get the job done. What led you last winter, I guess, to bring Jaime in to deal with corporate culture issues?
Well, it's probably Jaime, to be honest with you. So I'm an entrepreneur. I live up here, and I'm always thinking about top line revenue growth, more. And we have a good team, who generally enjoyed working together. But I've never worked for anyone else other than myself, really. So as we grew into this billion dollar portfolio, I had a lot of key talented people working with a limited amount of processes, and so I asked Jaime to come back and stop doing what she was doing for others and just focus on me and our business, which she was always there, but she was in the wings. And what one of the first things she did, like any good great organizational development professional, was to start collect data, and she did an employee questionnaire that just asked very basic questions, goals, positive things that has happened, negative things that have happened, and we got the results. Because originally I was like, why don't you come on and help us do some trainings and whatever, and my eyes were opened wide that I had created this gigantic business, and there were issues underlying. There were interdepartmental issues, there were interpersonal issues, and my stance up until that point was like, you're all adults, don't bring it to me, figure it out yourself. And I quickly learned that, or have learned over time, that that's not necessarily the way to generate camaraderie and real culture in an organization.
I was just going to say, and it's really no longer accepted either. I was telling Lauren Bryan earlier that the Surgeon General released, it's called the Surgeon General's Framework for Mental and Emotional Well-Being. This just happened last week, and in the workplace. And he's pretty much calling on all companies in the United States to start bringing resources in those areas to their employees. So it isn't I think on the website it actually talked about, this isn't like a want to have type of thing anymore. This is a must have in the workplace, specifically due to all of the stress and the burnout that was caused by COVID-19.
When you got the data, was there anything that really stuck out?
Well, when I came in February, I have a background in stress management and training and organizational development. And so I originally came in just to help. I was just going to do a couple stress management trainings. That's originally what I came in for. And then I was like, I'll just do a little questionnaire. Let's just see. Let's take the pulse on everybody. And I started to get those responses back with, pages of information. And it became very clear that the inner workings of the organization weren't receiving the level of attention or focus that they really deserved. And so I saw this huge opportunity. It's great to go out and get business, and Gideon's amazing at that. But I'm kind of I want to drop this. That the picture of the iceberg. I'm the underneath person. Everything that, you see the iceberg here, but then there's all this stuff underneath. So I ended up coming in for that.
I think that when you're focused on growth, you're focused on growth, right? And so we didn't have a disaster underneath the water level, but what we did have was a business that had outgrown itself, right? So we were in business for 5 years, and we were running our business like a small company where we had actually matured, at least from a revenue perspective and a responsibility perspective, into a kind of like a larger middle market organization, and we didn't have processes, procedures, and culture to match that growth.
Right, and the human element was really missing. And so I would also say that there was a culture. There's always a culture from what I've researched and what I understand about culture now in businesses. It's just, what is that culture? Is it a culture that you want? Is it a culture that's aligned with your values? Or is it just, this culture happened? because there's always, culture is really, it's a lot of different things, and there isn't really one agreed upon definition, but, it's kind of the way that people treat each other, and it's those unstated rules, that type of thing. So when I came in, I'm a very intentional, mindful person, and so I was able to talk to Gideon about, all of this growth is great, and, from a bottom line perspective, not looking at these processes and not giving attention to the actual people that are driving this machine, you're leaving a lot out there, right? And so for me, I look at individuals and I immediately thought about, like, what's happening with their growth? Like, what's happening with their career growth? Do they have someone that's sitting down talking to them about, the millennials, the Gen Z? Like, they're not really interested in money per se. That's not their top priority. They want to know, how can I grow in this company and what can I learn in this company? And so that's like right up my alley. I'm like a learning fanatic. I love learning. I love acquiring new knowledge. And it's necessary in today's workforce.
Most of us went back to socializing in person, went back to restaurants, went back to traveling more than a year ago. Somehow, going back to work face-to-face is happening a lot slower. Lots of companies are struggling with it. You will recall that General Motors announced a few months ago, we'd like everybody to come back to work 3 days a week, I think. And immediately the workforce says, that's not happening. So everybody seems to believe that all of us being in the same physical place with some regularity is important. 1 day a week, 1 day a month, 4 days a week. Is it really important? And if so, how do you find, how important is it, and what's the right number?
Great question, and very pertinent to today's times. We actually just decided, before I came in, our company had decided that they were going to do 3 days a week. And that was one of the things that came out in the questionnaire that I did. There were people that were kind of like, I don't really like this. And so I've done a lot of research about this and on this topic, and Microsoft actually came out with amazing research on it probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. And what they found is that you really can't force people to go back to an office. You have to create an environment where they want to go. And so in order to do that, you have to realize that you're competing with working from home, not having to get ready for work, being able to walk around in your pajamas, or not having to commute to work. And then we've got gas prices going up because of inflation. And so what they found is you need to really make mindful decisions about how you're bringing people together. And the best way to do that, according to their research, is through social connection. And so that's what people want. That is what is going to bring them back to the office. So Gideon was very open about, we've only have 40% of our team in Michigan. So it's not really fair for us to require that everybody goes to the office anyway. But the way that we did it is we decided that we would call everybody from the Michigan office. We'll have this time. We're going to do like kind of a round table. And so, and hear what you have to say. And one of the things that I've brought into the organization that's really important and is part of that Surgeon General's report is something called psychological safety. And that is the ability for a person on a team to speak with their opinion and not feel afraid that they're going to be retaliated against or judged by anybody else on their team. And so I talked about that. We brought our 15 people together. And we had like a little talking object, and everybody kind of went around, and if they had the object, everybody else had to be quiet. We asked that they not make comments on, negative comments on anything that anybody else said, because it's difficult. And I thought it went amazing. We listened to every single person, and then we said, we're not going to make a decision today, but we'll consider all of this. And Gideon and I went home, and one of the individuals at our company suggested maybe doing a lunch. Every week, doing a lunch. And some other people had suggested certain hours. I think Gideon suggested hours. He suggested 12 to 4, which I love. That's like the perfect time for me to go in, because I was thinking about myself. It's like I don't want to be a hypocrite and tell all these people that they have to go in at 9 o'clock when I'm not going in at 9 o'clock, regardless of whether I'm an owner or not. And so we decided to do 12 to 4 every Wednesday. GSH is catering lunch. And we set aside a time, we set aside an hour for us to actually connect with each other. Last week we did a mini dessert potluck for Halloween themed, and we also played Halloween games, believe it or not. We did the game where there was toilet paper and you got paired up in a pair, and there was a contest to see who could wrap their partner the fastest, which sounds crazy, and there were some people that were kind of like, But it was great. I mean, everybody was open, and we had a riot.
There was a lot of
We
laughs.
had a ball.
Yeah.
I mean, I have not laughed that hard in a very long time. So the purpose of that time, it's really about quality over quantity, and not forcing people to participate if they don't feel comfortable doing it, but making yourself vulnerable and having this delegated time once a week where you can connect with each other on a very basic human level. And that is actually one of the other items that was on the Surgeon General's list, is creating a sense of belonging and social connection for humans, because we have this tribal instinct. And when we're together in a tribe, even if we're stressed, our stress automatically dissipates because we're with others like us and we feel comfortable and safe. So that's something that we're trying to do at GSH.
What kind of, I've been in a lot of situations where people bring in trainers and there's oh no, like we have to go to training response. Have you found that that's that everyone's been sort of open-armed welcome or happy to interrupt their day to do this? Or
Great question. So I'm the trainer, and I'm also the boss's wife, right? So I was like already set up for kind of a challenging situation, but I was very honest about it. I worked with Gideon very closely with GSH during the first 5 years, but I was just working with him, right? I wasn't involved really with any of the team members. So I was very open in the beginning and said, you probably don't want to listen to your boss's wife. And I spent a good deal of time really trying to create my own relationships and develop trust and kind of prove myself, that I'm not just here because I'm his wife. I'm actually here because I'm qualified and I have a lot to bring to the table. So I think in the beginning, there was definitely some resistance. The first thing that we focused on was stress management, which to me is like a no-brainer. I mean, we spend so much time at work. We're so stressed. We have, more stress than any generation previously. And the statistics certainly show it. And I don't know. It's just, I think it's that whole idea of, making yourself vulnerable, trying something new. Nothing like that had ever been done there. And I've really tried to make it as safe as possible, though. I never call on anybody. It's like, participate if you like. One of the things that I recently started doing is using anonymous polling inside of Zoom and also using breakout rooms so that during the trainings, people are split up into smaller groups where they can actually collaborate, and there's a lot more collaboration now, which I think is really appreciated. The stress management was 5 sessions, and then after that, I did a session on civility in the workplace, which is basically rudeness, and how to deal with that and how that affects people and affects companies. So it's definitely gotten better. We're currently doing adaptability training, which I don't really know if people were excited about it. We were going to do time management, and Gideon and I made an executive decision to do adaptability because we're restructuring a lot of our company right now, and it's just necessary. Those skills are necessary.
I want to jump in on that. It's been intentional, the trainings that we're doing, because first of all, stress management, there are people who don't even understand that they are stressed, what stress is, that they experience stress and how to deal with it. And we knew that was coming because we were going to be reorganizing things. And so let's create a foundation of an understanding of I'm feeling a little flushed, or I'm feeling angry, or something. Like, first it's recognizing it. Now what do? I do some breathing. I take a time out. Whatever it might be. Let's level the playing field amongst the organization and the team members, so they all have that skill, right? Then we talked about civility, right? And civility isn't just the lack of incivility, right? So incivility isn't like bullying. It could be just lower level, not commenting on somebody, not giving somebody the time of day, not giving somebody a compliment, right? The civility is a step above neutral, right? So civility is sending an email and saying, "Hi, I hope you're well," instead of just saying, "Where are my TPS reports," right, or whatever. Civility is spending a couple minutes in the morning saying, "How was your weekend?" and actually like paying attention and listening. Civility is putting down your phone when you're having a conversation at times, right? And so teaching folks how to act and interact with one another creates a bond when we're being more supportive, right? And then moving over adaptability, we're in a high inflation market. We're in a high. It's inflammatory for our business. We've got properties that are performing differently than we had planned because mortgage rates are higher, or we're having a hard time with evictions, or whatever it might be. We're having to pivot, right? So teaching folks skills on how to be adaptable, right? And change management, how to be intentional about when changes occur. Basically just giving our folks the tools, the knowledge and the tools to deal with what they're dealing with currently.
Your company is looking to fill a key position, and I seem to be a great fit for it. And we've talked. We're very simpatico. I seem to have the skill set you're looking for. I really love my home in Kalispell, Montana. How do you decide whether that's a deal breaker or not? How do you decide how I can be made a part of your corporate culture, or it's just not possible?
It's totally possible. Yeah, that's not a deal breaker at all.
Yeah, so right off the bat, it doesn't matter if somebody lives in another state, right? Because we built the company from another state. Some of our key folks are in other states. I think what's more important is your experience, in the specific role that we're looking to have you come into, and your experience with culture and leadership. Jaime, you can probably speak a lot to that.
So I'm the last stop with interviews.
She's the last stop. If you're lucky, you only get me to interview you because I just say yes to everything all the time.
So
right?
Our culture is so important and pivotal now because we've both realized, we had people in positions previously that maybe it wasn't the best fit, and it costs 4 times a person's salary to replace them if they're in the wrong role. So I talked earlier about being very intentional. Sometimes I think it might be a little frustrating to Gideon because I do go slower, but I find it so important to measure twice and cut once. Like, what's the point in making these uninformed decisions and then having to deal with just a ton of crap, excuse my language, down the line? Like, let's just get it right, or at least do our best to get it right. So I'm now the last stop for the interview process, and if somebody doesn't fit our culture, and what I'm going off of, or what we're going off of right now, is based on a book that I read recently that's called The Ideal Team Player. And what we look for are 3 very distinct characteristics, and those is the person humble, are they hungry, and are they smart? And so humility in this regard is really, are they teachable? Are they open to learning? Are they open to doing things in a different way? It's okay, everybody feels uncomfortable changing, or everybody has kind of a threshold for that, how much they can put themselves out there, and that's okay. But what we're not looking for are people that have these huge egos and just huge pride and won't be open or receptive to new ways of doing things. And then hungry, we're looking for people that are passionate. Gideon and I are both very ambitious people. We're very hardworking, and we are really in anything that we do, but especially in our own company. And that's the type of person that we're looking for. Not somebody that's like toxic productivity, because I'm not into that either. One of the things I did back in May is I gave all of our team members the leading burnout questionnaire to see what we're dealing with here. You know, we want to make sure that nobody's burned out, but we're looking for people that are excited about what they're doing. They're excited to come to work. You know, they might have setbacks, but they're bouncing back, and they really connect with the work that they're doing, and they're doing it for themselves and the greater good. And then the last piece is SMART. And so that stands for technical smarts, right? So do they have the skills and the knowledge and abilities to be able to do the role that we're interviewing them for? And also, do they have interpersonal and emotional intelligence skills, which are extremely important to me. It's something that I've really talked to Gideon about over and over and over. I mean, it's necessary in the 21st century. So,
what's the highest, best use of Zoom?
You stumped
Well,
me on that.
is there anybody in this room who doesn't have a very ambivalent view about Zoom? Who doesn't think
I don't.
on a particular day that it's the best invention in the world, and on the next day think that it's the worst means of communication?
Let me speak to that. Okay. So, I think that there are amazing benefits to Zoom, and like being able to have a healthy, high-performing team across the country and across the world, and be able to interact face-to-face with them. I also am personally, I'm a creature of, I'm a social creature, more so than some, right? I love direct connection. I love this type of interaction, right? And what's that? In person. Thank you. In-person connection. And I'm also a person that is not productive at the office. I find when I go to the office, I'm engaged in a lot of conversations, but I'm not getting a lot of work done, right? And so I think that every individual or organization needs to find that balance. But what I love is that I don't have to do this to have a meeting with people anymore, and I can actually see your face, and I can wear shorts.
I want to add something too. I also feel like it is the responsibility of the leader or the person who is leading the meeting to think about the agenda, to have the appropriate people on the meeting, right? Because people are in meetings all the time, and it's like the average is like 5 hours, I think, a day that people are in meetings. I mean, that's ridiculous. I'm constantly trying to think of ways that I can keep it interactive, that I can keep it that the right people are there, right? That they're not there going to sleep. Like, I'm aware that people have other work to do besides come to my meeting. So I really consider it the responsibility of the person that's calling the meeting to make sure that they know who they're including, that they're trying to be interactive, those types of things. So.
I noticed that this has been a very civil discussion, but I wondered, before we wrap it up, if either of you can think of ways that that you have practiced or seen in the workplace results from or examples of civility, of what you're describing as, kind of an enhanced, uplifting civility.
In 1 minute.
In 1 minute.
Oh.
Well, I think that Jaime has been able to come in and create a more positive culture than we've had. She's created a community within our organization, and so we communicate a lot on Slack, which is a messaging system, and and we do Topic Tuesdays. Today's a Topic Tuesday, right? So the topic today on Slack was, what would you do if you had 2 extra hours today? And people commented, right? Not everybody comments every single time, but there's a conversation. Wins of the week on Wednesday, Thankful Thursdays every week, right? Where we're engaging individuals, team members in community discussion, and we're learning about each other, as well as like the lunches, the games, and what's been. To answer your question, I think that over time we've seen people who are maybe a little more apathetic to it, start contributing, and we've seen relationships grow stronger, and we've seen a community develop with very simple but yet intentional acts within the organization. So we're not just grinding every day together, we're having a connection and experience.